A couple of days ago, a video entitled "Is Donald Trump the Antichrist?" appeared on the YouTube channel iThink Biblically. That particular video aims to debunk the idea that Trump could be the Antichrist, and it uses one of my old videos to make its case. The gentleman on the iThink Biblically channel is named Caleb, who seems like a nice enough fellow, and the video he chose to critique was an older video of mine entitled "Donald J. Trump is the Antichrist, Proof from the Bible." Now, that particular video is nearly 3 years old, so I'm not going to claim there aren't some flaws in it. For one thing, I stated that Trump would win the 2020 election back then, which I was 100% wrong about. I also had, unfortunately, a few typos throughout the video. But in that video, I outlined what I believe were 45 different reasons that Donald J. Trump is, indeed, the man we were warned about in the Bible. And I made that case based on the descriptions the Bible gives us. That old video of mine isn't especially popular by YouTube standards, so I was surprised to see anyone try and debunk it. Ironically, since the iThink Biblically channel has more than 10 times the subscribers than mine, his paying attention to my video probably helps more people see it. The reason for this response video is that Caleb mischaracterized a couple of things I said in my video. But more importantly, he also made a major error with one particular Bible verse. But having said that, I will also agree with him on a couple of his criticisms. I'm going to primarily focus in on the parts where Caleb is talking rather than playing his entire video. I will, however, put a link to his video in the description below in case you want to watch the full version. So let's get right into this and debunk the idea that Donald J. Trump is the Antichrist.
G'day folks, welcome to the channel that helps you to distinguish the difference between truth and error. In this video, I want to examine a popular YouTube video that's been going around that claims that Donald Trump is in fact the Antichrist according to the Bible.
Let me stop it there because I don't know why he's saying my video is a popular video going around, since it's actually had less than 40,000 views in 3 years. That seems like the exact opposite of a popular video to me, but let's continue.
Now, this video gives 50 reasons why they think that Donald Trump is the Antichrist. I'm not going to cover all 50 of them, but I've chosen 10 of them because I think it's sufficient to show you that Donald Trump could not be the Antichrist. There's just absolutely no way that Donald Trump could be the Antichrist. Let's get right into it. Let me play you the first one of these reasons that I've selected for you, where this author claims that Donald Trump is the Antichrist.
Okay, first it's 45 reasons, not 50. And second, did he actually say there's no way Donald Trump could be the Antichrist? That's quite a statement, so let's see what Caleb has in store.
Right off the bat, we can see that this man is trying to deceive his audience. Donald Trump does not have images of Apollo all over his penthouse. He has one painting on the ceiling, which is very common for rich people to have Greek mythology painted on their ceilings and to have artwork and so forth.
Here Caleb said something that is a recurring theme in his video. He said that it's very common for rich people to have Greek mythology painted on their ceilings and to have artwork and so forth. He said this in order to dismiss the relevance of Trump having a painting of Apollo in his estate. Now, that is probably true about rich people, but we're not comparing Trump having a painting of Apollo on his ceiling to other wealthy people who may do the same thing. Instead, we're talking about how one of the biblical traits of the Antichrist matches Trump. Thus, those other wealthy people with paintings of Apollo on their ceilings will also need to match the additional traits of the Antichrist as Trump does, or the fact that they have such a painting on their ceilings is completely irrelevant to the topic at hand. To put it another way, someone isn't a candidate for the Antichrist because they match one or two of the biblical descriptions. Instead, the case for that person being the Antichrist is predicated on them matching all of what the Bible says. I'll talk more about this in a few moments. Let's go on.
He's got one painting on the ceiling and he's got a duplicate of that same painting framed, very small, in the corner. If you look at this image that he provided, you can see very clearly that he's trying to deceive people with these kind of red things everywhere quickly to say, look at all these things, but read what they are. You can see the Apollo painting on the top there, But then to the right, you've got the family portrait, you've got a Greek vase in Athenian style, you've got a statue of Eros and Psyche, you've got Baron's toy Mercedes, a picture of Father Fred, a Muhammad Ali tribute book, and the Trump coat of arms on a pillow. Does that look like statues or images of Apollo all over the place? You've got one painting on the wall and one painting on the ceiling. That's it. So right off the bat, we can see that this man is trying to deceive his audience. Let's look at the next one.
Okay, let's stop it there. No, this wasn't an attempt to deceive anyone about Trump having a painting of Apollo. Had I intended to do so, I could have simply posted this exact same image without all the identification of the items in the room. I do, however, agree with Caleb that the image I chose in that particular segment of my video could have given the wrong impression that there were many images or statues to Apollo in Trump's penthouse. So that was my mistake. I need to add, however, that it's more than just a painting of Apollo on Trump's penthouse ceiling. Daniel 11:38 says that the Antichrist will honor the God of forces with gold, silver, precious stones, and pleasant things, which are precisely what the picture of Trump's penthouse shows. Let's go on.
Let's look at this verse that he quoted, because this verse just destroys everything that he's trying to say. First of all, he didn't quote from Daniel 11:30. He quoted from Daniel 11:38. But read the verse before it, Daniel 11:37. One can't help but wonder whether this man wanted to throw his audience off by referencing Daniel 11:30 instead of what he really quoted, which was Daniel 11:38. So let's read it in context of 37.
Caleb is partially correct here in that the verse I referenced on screen was Daniel 11:30, whereas I read Daniel 11:38. The part I find humorous, though, is that he is implying that I referenced Daniel 11:30 on screen and quoted Daniel 11:38 in order to distract people from Daniel 11:37. Now, I'm not sure what kind of logic that is, but here's the truth. The on-screen reference to Daniel 11:30 wasn't a nefarious attempt to deceive others, but merely a typo, which I must admit are on a lot of my older videos, and unfortunately some of my newer ones too. I should also add that I've done several videos specifically about Daniel 11:37, so if I'm trying to distract anyone from that verse, I'm going about it in the wrong way. Coincidentally, since he brought it up, Daniel 11:37 is where Caleb makes a major mistake with his understanding of the Bible.
But if we read verse 37, it says, "He will show no regard for the gods of his fathers, or for the desire of women, nor shall he show regard for any other god, for he will magnify himself above them all. But instead he will honor a god of fortresses, a god whom his fathers did not know," so it can't be one of the Greek gods. "He will honor him with gold, silver, costly stones, and treasures." Notice here that it says that he will have no regard for the gods of his fathers or for the desire of women. Clearly, this cannot be talking about Donald Trump. Donald Trump has exhibited incredible desire for women. It's all through his career and the history we have of Donald Trump. We know that he loves women. We know that. He's a sinful, carnal man that loves women, but he's not the Antichrist. He can't be the Antichrist according to this passage. So this guy's case for Donald Trump being the Antichrist is just falling apart. But let's look at the next one.
This is a completely erroneous understanding of Daniel 11:37, but unfortunately Caleb isn't alone. There are many Christians who think that Daniel 11:37 is teaching us that the Antichrist won't be attracted to women. It does no such thing. This is a prime example of how many of us will read the Bible, but we don't study the Bible. We take a verse, or part of a verse in this case, completely at face value, rather than using our God-given sound minds to fully understand the deeper meaning. There are videos on YouTube that teach the correct interpretation of Daniel 11:37, both on my channel and elsewhere, but in case you're new to my videos and this verse has confused you, here are 7 quick points to make the meaning clear. Number 1, the basic problem is that many take Daniel 11:37 out of context. The passage runs from verse 36 through verse 39, and the word God or gods is mentioned 8 times in just 4 verses. The entire passage is about how the Antichrist puts himself above God and all other gods. Number 2, not only is verse 37 taken out of context from the surrounding verses, part of verse 37 is taken out of context from the rest of verse 37. The simple fact that the words desire of women are so out of place compared with the rest of this verse should tell us that there is a deeper meaning, and there is. Number 3, the desire of women is a reference to what women desire. The desire belongs to the women, not to the Antichrist. In other words, it's all about how the Antichrist won't care what women desire, not that he won't desire them. Number 4, the BDB lexicon of the Old Testament tells us that the word desire in this verse is referring to idolatry, and specifically the god Tammuz. In case you don't know, Tammuz was the god of fertility, and thus we can understand how this relates to the desire of women. Number 5, by simply checking other translations of this verse, we can further understand that the desire of women is specifically referring to the gods that women worship, in this case Tammuz, the god of fertility. Here are a few of those translations to help make this clear. The king will ignore the god his ancestors served and also the god that women love. In fact, he will ignore every god because he will think he is greater than any of them. He will have no respect for the gods of his ancestors, or for the god loved by women, or for any other god, for he will boast that he is greater than them all. He shall pay no attention to the gods of his fathers, or to the one beloved by women. He shall not pay attention to any other god, for he shall magnify himself above all. He will not show regard for the God of his ancestors, the God desired by women, or for any God, because he will magnify himself above all. He will not show regard for the gods of his fathers, the God longed for by women, or for any other God, because he will magnify himself above all. This king will reject the gods his ancestors worshipped, and the God preferred by women. In fact, he will put himself above all gods. The king will ignore the God his ancestors served, and also the God that women love. In fact, he will ignore every God because he will think he is greater than any of them. He will not respect the gods of his fathers, not even the God loved by women. He will not respect any God. He will elevate himself above them all. Number 6, those other translations match the context of the surrounding verses of Daniel 11:37. It's all about God or gods. The Antichrist won't care about the God of his fathers, the God preferred by women, or any God, because he considers himself to be above them all. Number 7, the heart of the problem is that biblical Hebrew had no word for goddess, and so the KJV and a few other translations did not properly render the meaning of the verse. However, by studying and not just reading this verse, it is clear that Daniel 11:37 is talking about the gods of women. So hopefully we can now understand that this passage in Daniel 11 is all about how the Antichrist will place himself above all other gods. To claim that it's about the Antichrist not being attracted to women is absolutely ridiculous. So let's get back to this video.
First of all, this fourth beast is understood by most scholars as being the Roman Empire. So Donald Trump would have to be the ruler of the EU, the United States of Europe, or something like that, in order for this to be Donald Trump.
Here Caleb is correct in his statement that the fourth beast is the Roman Empire, but then he incorrectly concludes that this must mean that it will be geographically in Europe. And since Trump isn't the president of the EU, he can't be the head of the Roman Empire. Non sequitur indeed. In actuality, America is the re-emergence of the Roman Empire. Rome's incredible impact on America's founding is well documented. In fact, as America's founding fathers designed their new experiment, only one true republic could give them a blueprint for the government they wanted, Rome. And it wasn't just Rome's government that played such a big role in forming America, as the influence extended to nearly every aspect of American society, from laws to language, art to architecture, and even the culture itself. The United States is the fourth beast, the extension of the Roman Empire.
Secondly, we've got 10 horns here, 10 trumps, 10 Donald Trumps or 10 of Trump's ancestors or something crazy like that you would have to believe to make this Trump. And it says that this little Trump defeats and subdues 3 of these other Trumps. So Donald Trump has to then subdue 3 rulers called Trump that must somehow be a part of his family line. And all of these people must be kings of Europe. I mean, this is insanity to think that this is Donald Trump.
Yes, there's definitely a bit of insanity going on, as I think Caleb might be cracking up a bit here. First of all, at no point in my video did I say that the 10 horns are also named Trump or members of the Trump family or his ancestors. Caleb is simply making things up out of whole cloth here. Second, Trump's name being connected to the little horn of Daniel and his matching the descriptions for the Antichrist has nothing to do with the 10 horns. These are 2 entirely separate things. Third, yes, the 10 horns will be 10 kings, and the little horn will uproot 3 of them, but this hasn't happened as of yet. Not all prophecy is already fulfilled. We still have much to go through in these last days. So let's get back to the video and hopefully we hear something a bit less crazy this time.
All politicians try to convince different groups to vote for them and make contradictory promises. All politicians do this. There's nothing new. In fact, Donald Trump has probably done it less than others.
So here we have Caleb downplaying Trump's skill at using flattery, which I connected to Daniel 11:21, by saying that all politicians do this. This is repeating his defense of Trump having a painting of Apollo in his penthouse as no big deal, since all wealthy people do similar things. Again, as I said before, this isn't about Trump simply matching 1 or 2 of the biblical descriptions for the Antichrist. He matches all of them up and down the line. So the fact that other people might match one particular description is irrelevant unless they also match all of the biblical descriptions.
So there's a big difference between the way Donald Trump came to power and the way Antiochus Epiphanes came to power. So if we're going to use this verse as like a type and shadow of the Antichrist, it just can't apply to Donald Trump. Let's look at the next one.
Here Caleb is talking about how, in my video from 3 years ago, I discussed Trump using intrigue as a way to gain power. Caleb does make a valid point that the political intrigue surrounding Trump in his first term as president doesn't really compare to what happened with Antiochus Epiphanes. However, to reiterate, that video of mine that Caleb is talking about is old, as I made it about 6 months before the 2020 election. The political intrigue we saw surrounding the 2020 election was simply unlike anything we've seen before in American history. Trump and his political allies tried a multitude of secretive and backdoor ways to overturn the election, to pressure politicians, to have fake electors, and on and on. It was a textbook example of the meaning of political intrigue. Trump's scheming and the political intrigue surrounding the 2020 election was not only exponentially worse than what he did in 2016, it is a forewarning of what he and his political allies will do in 2024.
A woman is riding the beast, and that woman represents a kind of religious system. And many scholars agree that this is talking about the revived Roman Empire, and the woman riding the beast is the Roman Catholic Church. This has nothing to do with Donald Trump. Donald Trump, again, is not a ruler of the Roman Empire, ancient or revived, and he really has nothing to do with the Roman Catholic Church. In fact, the Pope seemed to be against him, and he seemed to be against the Pope. So
Caleb is really exaggerating things here. Yes, many do believe that the woman riding the beast is the Catholic Church, but many Bible scholars do not. And they don't because they recognize the error in thinking that Revelation 17:9 is referring to Rome being built on 7 hills. The reason it doesn't, in case you're not sure, is that the Bible uses the word mountain to represent a kingdom. Thus, as the Bible teaches us, the 7 heads on the beast are 7 kingdoms and also 7 kings, as verse 10 explains. These 7 kingdoms existed at different times down through history and in different geographical locations. Thus, Mystery Babylon, or the woman riding the beast, will also be at a different geographical location depending on which one of these 7 kingdoms was then on earth. Since Rome is the 4th beast of Daniel, and since America is the reincarnation of the Roman Empire, and since the man who matches the biblical descriptions for the Antichrist is an American, we can also understand that Mystery Babylon will be connected to America.
The Antichrist, when he comes, is not going to stoke nationalism. He's going to try and unite the nations of the world underneath his new world order. He's going to be like the savior that unites everyone. He's not going to be seen as somebody that's causing division. So we can see clearly that can't be Donald Trump.
Caleb is somewhat correct in what he says here, in that the Antichrist will look to unite all the nations under him and will claim to be the savior of the world. He will want to be seen as the one who finally brings peace and security to us all through the covenant with many. But the Antichrist doesn't start out as this great ruler of nations. In fact, Daniel 11:23 teaches us that he comes to power with a small number of people, and Revelation 6:2 tells us that he goes out conquering and to conquer. Additionally, the Bible speaks of nation against nation in the last days, so nationalism will be quite prevalent as the Antichrist rises to power. Thus, since he comes to power with a small number of people, there is every reason to believe that he starts out as a nationalist. Another area that Caleb is wrong here is in saying that the Antichrist won't cause division. In fact, the Bible tells us that he sows discord, meaning that he purposely looks to divide one person or one group against another in order to benefit himself. These verses all clearly teach us that the Antichrist starts out on a national level with a small group of people. He gains power by dividing one group against another and then goes out conquering and to conquer. After those things happen, he gains power over the nations of the world.
Now, in terms of the race division that's going on, let's say he was implying something to do with the racism that's going on in America now, the race culture issues there. Donald Trump has nothing to do with that. That's being stoked not by Donald Trump. That's being stoked by the extreme leftist Democrats. They're the ones that are stoking this racial tension there in terms of the blacks and the whites and so forth. It's got nothing to do with Donald Trump. So that just gives us a reason to believe that Donald Trump is not the Antichrist. Another reason to believe that Donald Trump is not the Antichrist.
This statement by Caleb is most likely a result of him not living in America nor being an American. If he was actually living in this country over the last few years, he would understand how incredibly divisive Trump is in every way imaginable. That is not to absolve the far left of their racism or divisiveness. There are certainly many people and groups on the left that seek to divide us based on a variety of issues, including the color of our skin, just as there are many people and groups on the far right who do this. But Trump himself is profoundly divisive and purposely drives wedges between people based on how much praise or criticism he gets. Even the mildest criticism results in Trump calling his detractors evil, treasonous, and even the scum of the earth. And since nearly all of the criticism of Trump comes from the left, his divisive rhetoric has the net effect of inflaming those divisions that already exist. The racism, the misogyny, and all the other issues that divide us are made worse because of Trump denigrating those who criticize him and dividing one group against another.
When the Antichrist comes, you will know it. There will have been, wars, terrible wars throughout the world, and the Antichrist will come and try to bring peace and to unite the world under him. And in the end, the world will worship the dragon. When you read Revelation 13, the world will worship the dragon and the Antichrist, who will be the ruler of the revived Roman Empire.
Here Caleb is repeating his mistake of a few moments ago and basically saying that until we see all these terrible wars and then someone arriving on the scene to unite all nations under him in peace, the Antichrist isn't here. That's simply not true. If the Antichrist will be as easy to recognize as Caleb claims, the Bible would not give us dozens of descriptions of this man of sin. There would be no need to tell us his character traits, what he plans to do, or to even give us the prophecies in the book of Daniel, Revelation, and elsewhere. The truth is that the Bible tells us a great deal about the Antichrist because many of us will be deluded by him. We will fall away from the faith and follow this wicked man down the road to perdition.
It's a real stretch, and it's quite clear that this man was just trying to demonize Donald Trump in order to persuade people not to vote for him. The man who created that documentary was most likely an extreme leftist Democrat. He was certainly not a Christian, that's for sure.
Well, I was waiting for Caleb to say something like this, but I'm still pretty disappointed to hear it. It always amazes me that any criticism of Trump is dismissed as just coming from his political opponents or from those who hate him in some way. This is a very lazy way of defending Trump. No, I'm not an extreme leftist Democrat. In fact, I was a registered Republican for my entire life up until 2017, at which point I changed my affiliation to Libertarian. My first vote was actually for a straight Republican ticket that was headlined by Gerald Ford, so that should give you an idea of how ancient I am. But I'm no longer into politics, and I no longer vote. Politics are, in my view, the things of this world, and they are filled with all kinds of evil on both sides of the political aisle. Too many Christians view their faith through a political lens, and unfortunately, that's what Caleb is doing here. He sees me as an extreme leftist Democrat because he's viewing any criticism of Trump through a political lens. Second, as far as Caleb saying that I'm certainly not a Christian, that's a very sad thing to hear from another professing Christian. It seems as if his definition of being a Christian is contingent on how much one likes Donald J. Trump. In truth, my faith in God has never been stronger, and I fully believe that Jesus Christ is my Savior. I've accepted Jesus into my life, and I'm trying to live a Christian life as best I can. Now, I'm far from perfect, and that's for sure, but by the grace of God through faith, I will be saved. So let me conclude with this clip in which Caleb kind of gives us a peek into why he made his video.
We can just completely reject that kind of thinking, the thinking that Donald Trump is the Antichrist. I'm not saying that Donald Trump's a godly man. I'm not saying he's a righteous man. He's a worldly, carnal, sinful man. I do think that I would vote for him if I was American. I would definitely vote for Donald Trump because I think he's done a lot of good things for the Christian church and for America as a whole.
Caleb concludes his video by telling his viewers to reject any thinking that Donald Trump is the Antichrist. In fact, he says he would vote for Trump if he could, and left multiple comments on his video defending Trump, including calling him awesome. This gets to the heart of the problem with his video. Caleb is coming from the perspective of being a Trump fan and having a YouTube channel that is largely viewed by those who love Donald J. Trump. To those Christians who love Trump, even the suggestion that he might possibly be the Antichrist is a bridge too far. They simply can't wrap their heads around the idea because Trump has this strange hold over them. This strange hold is the strong delusion. I'm also hoping that Caleb reconsiders his view on Daniel 11:37, since so many Christians are deceived by that verse. Perhaps he might even consider doing a video about it one day, as that would help many on his channel. In closing, I want to say that I wish Caleb and the viewers of iThink Biblically channel all the best. May all of us draw closer to God in prayer for protection during these last days, and that we might be guided to his kingdom. Thank you for taking the time to watch this response video, and if you care to leave a comment, please do. As always, kindly be respectful of one another in your comments, especially those with whom you disagree. If you haven't done so, please consider subscribing to my channel and click on the notification bell so you don't miss future updates. Thanks again for watching, and I'll talk to you guys soon.